is a boutique education advisory that helps aspiring students get accepted into top-tier education institutions globally for high school, undergraduate, master's, MBA, and executive education programs.
Good evening, everyone. We at ReachIvy are delighted to welcome you again to our live broadcast event created especially for students who requested us to do events in their cities worldwide. We're happy to bring to you a masterclass on big data, and we have a very accomplished guest joining us to share his expertise. But before we start the event, a little bit about ReachIvy. ReachIvy is a premium educational advisory that helps aspiring students get accepted into top-tier universities globally for high school, undergraduate, master's, MBA, and executive education programs. ReachIvy education specialists are graduates from top international institutes themselves and are aware of the intricacies of the rigorous admissions procedure and extreme attention to detail required by a top-ranked university. A little bit about Vibha Kagzi, who's the founder and CEO of the company, ReachIvy. She holds an MBA from Harvard Business School and a Bachelor of Science from Carnegie Mellon University. Vibha is the co-president of the Harvard Club of Mumbai and is on the Carnegie Mellon Admissions Council. Over to you, Vibha.
Thank you, Nishreen, for that delightful introduction. It's a pleasure and a personal honor actually to invite Professor Murli to the offices here because I'm an alumnus of Carnegie Mellon, so what better delight than to have a professor from your own university with you. I'm just going to give a little introduction on Professor Viswanathan. Professor Viswanathan has been with Carnegie Mellon since 2007. At CMU, his primary focus areas are lecture delivery, curriculum design, industry student project management, and research development. He lectures students in business intelligence, analytics, data mining, enterprise architecture, Java, and information systems for managers. He has coordinated over a dozen student projects with the South Australian government departments and industry partners. He's also a senior member of the Australian Computer Society with certified professional certifications and has substantial experience with research projects, course and curriculum design, and has delivered a variety of courses at all levels in information systems and computer science. Thank you, Professor Viswanathan, for taking the time out. And students, I'm sure, are going to really benefit from this interaction.
Thank you.
So for the first question, just to understand from your background, such an accomplished background, you've clearly grew up in India, you've traveled across the world. What attracted you to Carnegie Mellon to start with? Why did you pick CMU?
I think there's about 10 reasons, but I'll pick the top 3. I think one of the first reasons was obviously the emphasis on innovation and research at Carnegie Mellon. In addition to that, I think what attracted me the most was the emphasis on teaching quality. So, Carnegie Mellon is probably one of the few institutions in the world where they have a teaching professor position. So there's a very high focus on bringing the state of the art from the field to the classroom and teaching the students. I think that's really what attracted me because I wanted to focus on teaching in addition to research, and I think Carnegie Mellon was one of the best places to do that.
And how's the experience been with the students there? What have you found as distinctive?
I think it's been fantastic. Another thing I wanted to mention was I think the hands-on approach. Carnegie Mellon really emphasizes the hands-on approach, and I think the students that we've been getting are amazing because the amount of effort they put into their projects over the number of semesters they study at Carnegie Mellon is simply overwhelming. So yeah, I've been amazed with the students that we get.
Terrific. So your areas of specialization are business intelligence, data mining, enterprise architecture. I want to start with absolute basics. Could you just define each of these terms for us and just explain what is this universe even comprised of?
So basically, data mining was this field that came out of research in artificial intelligence, and then what happened? What it basically is you've got loads of data. I mean, right now you have a data deluge. According to IBM, we're actually generating about 2.5 billion gigabytes of data on a daily basis. Right? The question is, how do you analyze this data to make some sense out of it, and then use that knowledge that you get out of that to then use it for any other activity, like a business, like cross-selling a product, or to predict, when a drug might suit a patient. or basically to generate ad revenue like what Google does, right? So the question is, you've got a lot of raw data being generated, and you want to process that data and come up with some useful knowledge, right? And that's what sort of data mining is all about. The business intelligence, word comes out from the business aspect of data mining. So a lot of companies want to use this data for deriving an intelligence that they could use in their own sectors. Like for example, as I said, in terms of, for example, a company like Amazon wants to analyze their customer profiles, and then they'd like to predict what the customer would want next. Right? So if you see Amazon's, when you buy something, Amazon asks you, would you like to buy this additional thing, right? So essentially, that's an example of data mining, customer data, to try and predict what the customer wants next. So essentially what they're using is deriving intelligence from the customer data and then using that to improve their business. That could be revenue, that could be just a better understanding of their customer.
Okay. So it's effective use of data.
It is effective use of data
to make business decisions.
To make business decisions, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Okay, super.
Yeah.
Great. So I mean, obviously this is a super hot area.
Right.
There's lots of research being done in the area.
Sure.
Lots of universities are focusing on this. Coursera is offering courses on
exactly.
this.
Yeah.
It seems to be the buzzword, both in the tech and the business world.
Sure.
3 companies that are actually using big data effectively, in your opinion.
Yeah, I think Walmart was one of the earliest players in the business intelligence market, and they used business intelligence to decide what products should be made available in what stores and what products should they sell at what times. Like, they were one of the earliest players from the commercial retail scene. Google is one of the biggest consumers of data mining and BI. And if you look at the amount of ad revenue they generate, analyzing customer data. Other companies include like Facebook, most big telecommunication companies, including, for example, Reliance in India, use a lot of business intelligence or data mining tools to, better analyze their customer data and try to make sense of that raw data and use it for their business decision making. So,
okay, so you touched upon the retail industry,
yes,
the telecom industry.
Yeah.
And you talked about this digital marketing.
Exactly right. Yeah, and major Medicare centers, and medical hospitals are using data mining technologies to predict, for example, what would be the efficacy of certain drug treatments. Like for example, you can't do unlimited drug trials. There's a limit to what you can do with that. So if you can analyze your data to predict which trial will be more successful, that's a great field. Of play for data mining and BI tools. And then there are a number of examples in the medical scene, which are where data mining has been used for measuring the efficiency of drug treatments, trying to predict diseases from data, like is this patient going to get this specific disease based on history. I was a part of a trial in South Korea when I did a research project. What they did there was they had smart sensors, and they had smart homes, where you had a big aged population living, and what these sensors were doing was constantly measuring things like falls, a person having high levels of blood sugar or high blood pressure, and this data was constantly being sent back to the hospital. And that data over a period of time, like just assume that you have 24 hours of that data, that was used to basically provide what they call as wellness advice to the aged folk, who then use that to control their diet, their lifestyle, and all the other factors. Right? So that's one of the biggest areas in the healthcare sector where data is being mined actively. So.
Okay, so just to be clear, the difference between generic statistics and big data or data mining isn't the quantum of data we're talking about?
Exactly right.
Is it the sophistication of analytics? What
exactly
is
right. So I think one of the biggest things is the data that we're getting right now is of essentially of two kinds. There's structured data, that is typically things like what you put in a spreadsheet would be structured, a table of data, and then there's a lot of unstructured data. Like, you've got videos, you've got audio, you've got data in multiple formats.
Right.
So there's knowledge in both these kinds of data. Right. So data mining is not just looking at saying, what do I do with this table of numbers? But it's looking at, there's this whole heap of data. There's images, there's video, there's unstructured text. How do we put them all together to come up with extra, additional knowledge?
Okay, so what conventional statistics would term noise is now being
analyzed better. Yeah. Okay. And then of course the quantum is the biggest thing. The volume of data is simply amazing. So
it's just being able to manage
being able to manage
process.
that volume of data. Yes, that also is a part of the data mining process.
Okay, great. Okay, so you gave us a few examples of companies that have actually effectively used
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
Any companies or instances where you feel that they didn't actually use data analytics, business intelligence?
Yeah, sure.
Right?
So I think one of the biggest areas where companies have issues in is actually the data management and the data integration process. Like, for example, if you I worked on several projects, and one of these projects was for South Australian government. And one of the issues that many governments have is they've got their data all over the place. Right? Now it's very easy if you have all your data in one file. As you can understand, it's quite easy to then analyze that data. But what if you had legacy systems, like systems that were 20 years old that had some of your data, and then you've got new systems that you purchased yesterday which has some of your data, and then you've got some of the data sitting in files that you can't access anymore. How do you then put all this together, right? So one of the biggest challenges in this data mining and BI area is data integration. That is, how do I bring all the data together so that then I can mine it, right? And bringing all the data together is possible, but it's expensive. So one of the biggest challenges that governments and even private sector is facing is how do we then reduce the cost of this data integration? Because if it's going to be prohibitively expensive, then we're not going to see the ROI on using these technologies, right? So another example that I cite is the Royal Adelaide Hospital, for example. I was told that they use close to 150 different IT systems to manage patients. Right? Just think about integrating data from all these different systems together and then mining. Right? So it's like they call this the spaghetti syndrome. You have multiple systems that are connected, like a bowl of spaghetti,
right?
And we have to get the data from all of them. You have to figure out some way of designing a middleware layer that can talk to all these systems and extract the data for you. Wow. So that's one of the biggest challenges, I think, and also companies do not basically do not realize the complexity of data integration. So they decide that here's a cool technology, here I've got technologies like Hadoop and I've got these cool tools from IBM and Google. Let's use them. Question is, you need to decide. You need to come up with a strategy. You need to study your own data resources and see if you can bring all the data together with the least amount of resources, and then you can start using these cool tools. Right? So I think a lot of companies they don't emphasize the strategy and the business alignment, and therefore there are issues with then cost overruns and budget issues going on there. Like I was just reading this report from Gartner. It says that there's a 70 to 80% failure rate for business intelligence projects.
Oh,
right?
Wow.
So, of course, numbers are numbers. So,
right.
but it just drives the point that companies have to plan lay out a careful strategy.
Sure.
Have to do all their feasibility studies to decide if the technology is going to give them, that additional ROI that they're looking for.
Sure. Okay. So, and since you bring up ROI,
yeah.
Any sense, just a general sense of the cost required to adopt these technologies?
Sure. So, as I said, right, in my experience, what I've heard is that up to 70% of the budget can go towards integrating the data. If you are using a lot of legacy systems and if you're an old enterprise, right? So, in addition to that, I mean, if we're talking about if you're depending on the size of the enterprise, we're talking about then either outsourcing or insourcing. The software. It's very similar to a software development project. You're outsourcing this development, this data integration process to a third-party provider.
Right.
And then there's all those costs associated with depending on the size of the enterprise, and then there's licensing costs for the different tools that you're using.
Okay, so these are not open source technologies.
So there are open source technologies, but the thing is, open source technologies, while they're available for free, you still need someone to manage them, right? So at the end of the day, you still need maintenance, you still need support,
right.
And that's going to take up. That's certainly going to cost you. So there's that trade-off between, are you going to go with a branded provider, or are you happy to get an open source technology and implement it? But then you have to find someone reliable who can manage that technology for you.
Sure. Okay. So if it's a new company and they say, okay, the CEO makes a decision saying we're going to go ahead and integrate business intelligence, data analytics. What are sort of the stages of this process? How do you integrate from zero to full?
Yeah. So what you can take any BI project as a regular, as I said, as a regular software engineering or software development project. Right. But the important thing there is to basically start with, as I said, one of the most important things is to look at your strategy and look at your business and align it to your business strategy. Right? Yeah. The question is so the question is, why are you using? The question is to ask yourself is, why are you using BI tools? Right? What do you want out of them? Right?
Sure. What is your need?
What's your need for the BI tools? Right? If all you're using BI tools is to provide some end users, you've got a bunch of spreadsheets that you want your staff to analyze. Right. You don't really have to invest millions of dollars in a big enterprise-wide solution. Right? But if you have let's say you're a telecom company and you've got customer data over the last 20 years and you want to do something about it. Right. So yes, there's a great area for you to work on. Right. And that's when you can basically see that applying BI tools are going to basically improve your business efficiency, your customer management. You're going to be able to cross-sell products much better. Prevent customers from jumping to other providers. So there you've got business strategies laid out for you. And that's when you can basically invest a significant amount of money. And then I think you start with developing the strategy first, seeing what's going to be your short-term and long-term achievements as a result of this technology, and how is it going to generate an ROI for you. Right? So I think that is really important. I think it would be really foolhardy to just jump in because there's your competitor is doing it. Sure. I think it's a careful process of planning and strategy development. And then implementation of what you need. Sure. I think is the starting point. Right. And then you can start again with the tools. There's a range of tools that you can use. There are tools that give you amazing number of features, but you might not even need them. Right. The question is what do you need for your analysis? And I think if you go down that path, then that'll be much more efficient. Implementation of BI.
Okay, so first understanding your own business.
I think that's the biggest.
What do I need?
What do you need? Right.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I think enterprise architecture that I did define earlier is also all about that, right? It's about saying how do you align the business strategy and IT elements in any organization? Right? Because the idea is that IT gives you the maximum benefit if it aligns with your business goals and your strategy. Right? If IT is like on its own path and business and strategy are on their own track, then the thing is you're investing a lot of money in IT, but it's not necessarily giving you the returns that it should. Right. So that's what enterprise architecture is all about. It's about mapping your enterprise and seeing what elements do not align and what should be aligned.
Sure. So you said assess your needs. Don't just sort of jump the gun and try to play catch up with the competitor. But since you brought up competition, I want to understand how is the competitive landscape evolving with this advent of new technologies? Right. And what happens to companies that don't actually jump the gun and don't actually get on board the ship? What is the negatives or the drawbacks of not adopting the technology?
Yeah. So I mean, so if you're a sort of a small scale or a medium scale enterprise, then there's you can probably get away without investing too much in BI technologies, right? But if you're a bigger enterprise, I think there's no staying back. I think you have to get in. You have to jump into the ship, and I think the reason for that being that these days enterprises are generating a large volume of data, whether you like it or not. The automation, the large amount of automation in every enterprise basically brings you a large amount of data in return. The question is, if you carefully look at the data that you're generating, there would be areas where you can certainly apply BI technologies. It could just be improving your own efficiency within the enterprise. Right? It could be evaluating your staff members by studying the data that they, by studying their work behavior. Right? It could be looking at stopping attrition from your company. So there are 100 different places where you can apply these technologies. And if your competitors are doing it, the chances are that they are basically beating you in some aspect. Right. So I think there's scope for these technologies in all enterprises. But as I said, the question is careful analysis, self-analysis of what areas require these technologies and what areas are going to give you the best benefit.
Sure. So a fair amount of introspection
is required. Yeah. But I think that from the competitive landscape, I think many companies, every major, for example, if you take the telecom sector, all major telecommunication companies are using these technologies. Right? So if you're a major player, there's no question of not taking part. If you're in the healthcare sector, again, all major players use BI technologies. And just to mention a point here is many major vendors of BI technologies, for example, like IBM or SAP or Teradata, all of them have started incorporating BI tools within their main systems. So many clients who basically are get database systems or transactional systems from these vendors, they already have these tools, right? So the question is, about 15-20 years back, these technologies were they were upcoming. They weren't integrated as much. But what's happening now is even Microsoft Excel has data mining tools. Right? So it's becoming the integration is quite deep. So even most of the tools that are coming out for data management, they have some aspect of BI in them.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's quite easy for companies also to take part in this.
Okay, so the tools are accessible.
Are accessible, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and you brought up a variety of sectors. And
Yeah.
I want to understand, is there anything going on in the defense space with business intelligence? Any examples where it's being used for defense and security?
It's the defense is probably one of the biggest consumers of data mining technologies, right? So, for example, the whole terrorist framework is a ripe field for data mining. For example, the US is constantly mining user data, and in fact, there was about a year back there was this news about the PRISM program, which was basically analyzing the citizens' data, phone calls, email, all of that. And the idea was to basically, the question is simply this: can you study a person's phone calls, messaging behavior, email, and try and predict if this person is going to be a terrorist, potential terrorist? Yeah. So, clear example of data mining. In addition to that, I was recently discussing a project with the Australian Defence Organization, and they're, for example, using data mining to, for example, you've got images of places where, for example, people might be, creating a bomb or something like that. For example, using satellite images, images are quite hazy and images are not very crystal clear, like your selfies that you take. But the question is, how do you study these images and try to predict which of these images look like there's something fishy going on there, right? So you've got, there are satellites and there are drones and there are all these, basically devices that can capture images, around the globe. The question is, can you mine these images and try to pick those images where you can spot something, fishy happening, right? And so that's again another example of data mining. Taking the image example, in the medical field, you've got doctors trying to use data mining, going through images to predict, to automatically try to predict if this is an image of a person suffering like a terminal disease. Right. So there's this wide, application of data mining in defense. Wow. And also, for example, drones produce gigabytes of data from their sensors. Right. So one of the biggest areas for defense is how do you take all this data that one of these modern aircraft or drones is generating, and then quickly analyze it and produce something meaningful out of it. Right. So defense is a big field for data mining, and there's a lot of demand as well with that. So
okay. Wow, fascinating. Okay, so we've talked obviously a lot about the pros of the technology.
Yeah.
Any threats of this technology? And with everyone getting so excited about the technology, do you feel there's any sort of negatives or threats or anything like this?
So I think the biggest biggest issue that we've seen with data mining is privacy, right? So data mining implies lots of privacy, right? So if you just look at the news that's coming up in the last couple of years, the number of incidents of customer data being violated, I've read a statistic that it's probably gone up by 200%. Right? For example, Facebook data was, Facebook had some issues with data privacy. You had Dropbox accounts being, hacked at some point of time. You had, Gmail accounts. There was a news article a few months back about Gmail accounts being hacked and passwords being available online. And this is not in just not just highlighting these three companies, but this has happened in many major companies. There was an incident about Microsoft, ending up reading, a employees' email. So there's a large number of cases where data issues, losing customers' data, and a lot of the reason for this also is that a lot of data has been outsourced. I know, for example, in Australia, data from supermarkets is being outsourced to a number of countries in the ASEAN for analysis. Right? The question is, how do you then, how can you ensure people that this data is going to be private, right? So that I think is the #1 issue in data mining. That is, and in fact, there's a field that has come out of as a result of this. It's called privacy preserving data mining. So there's a bunch of researchers who are trying to say, well, how do we data mine, but then keep the records still private, right? For example, this is a big thing in the medical field because no one wants to share their medical information, right? And I don't mind sharing my Facebook photos maybe with a few people. But I really don't want to, tell people about my medical history, right? So customers really don't want to do it, and many countries, as a result, they have very stringent controls on privacy with healthcare data. Right? So the question is, how do we then create some tools that will somehow, take records of customers, but then, somehow hide them, but still mine them and be able to derive knowledge out of that, right? So that's given rise to a new field of, privacy preserving data mining. So I think privacy for me is the #1 issue, and I guess for many people that's probably one of the biggest issues in data mining.
So it's privacy, and you said transportation of data, which
yes, exactly, right. Again, which is related to privacy as well. Yeah.
What about data storage? With all these heaps and heaps of data coming up, do we have enough servers?
So I think that's it's an interesting question, but the answer to that is that the amount of storage costs. I mean, if you look at the cost of buying a hard disk, right?
It's a fraction.
Exactly right. Like, I mean, for example, when I got my first computer, I had a 4 GB hard disk. Right? I mean, and now I carry a 128 GB USB drive.
Sure.
So as you can see, the cost of storage has actually dropped down, pretty much exponentially, I think.
Right.
And therefore, people are storing all the more data. I mean, when the cost of storage goes down, we tend to store more data.
Sure.
So that gives rise to the deluge of data that we're seeing. So, so storage of data is no issue.
No issue.
But then the issue is data management, right? The cost of hardware is low, but then how do you still manage all this data, and how do you how can you extract this for data analysis? That's the bigger challenge. Not just storing the data, but storing it in a meaningful way so that I can extract, for analysis.
Okay. Segmenting your data.
Segmenting your data, on the fly. Rather than doing it, I mean, there's no question of doing it later on. You have to do it when you collect the data, because that's the amount of data that we're generating. So let's organize it at the time you collect it, and then be able to retrieve it in a meaningful way.
Sure.
And that's where this whole big data thing, field is now really hot. Because of the volume of data that we're generating, we need to have these new tools to manage and store the data.
Right. Okay. So storage costs as a tiny fraction.
Storage costs are low, right? So that's not storage costs are not a big issue. The bigger issue is the smart management of the data.
And you don't see storage becoming an issue in the next 10 to 20
No, I think storage. As I see, I don't see storage as a big issue because for example, companies like IBM are constantly coming up with newer storage technologies. For example, there's this talk about holographic storage, and there's all these newer technologies that are coming up, which are making large amounts of data storage possible with smaller sizes, within smaller sizes of devices. So I think storage is not probably going to be a big issue.
And even though you said the data is available in all sorts of formats, so you talk about audio and
exactly right, audio and video and all of that. And the thing is, what I want to point out also is, to a large extent, a lot of this data also is fairly useless, right? So we can actually throw away a lot of this data,
right?
So but that's what we have to do in a smart way, so that we have the good data is available for analysis,
sure.
And the useless one is it's thrown away right when we as soon as we collect it.
Sure.
Yeah. So I don't see storage as a big issue in that context. So.
Okay. Great. Okay. I want to get a sense of the future. So today you've given us a very good overview of what's going on in this field right now. What's the landscape looking like 10 years, 15 years from now? Let's put on those futuristic glasses. Give us a sense of where you sort of see the future of this technology.
Yeah. So I think there's this whole talk about the Internet of Things, right? So we're connected in a very big way. You have, for example, you've got you've got refrigerators with internet access now, which are not connected to the internet. You've got smart homes, and you've got smart devices that can all talk to each other, right? So so there's this. I think as we go ahead, I think the challenge is that there's all this data being generated, and how do you basically take all this data and make sense out of it, in a smart way, so that you can control all these gadgets, all these devices in one place, right? And still kind of not lose your privacy and maintain that. And I think this Internet of Things, this connectivity, I think is probably going to increase tenfold, and you're going to see a lot more interaction. Homes are going to be much smarter as a result of these devices that are becoming smarter as well. And I think that's from an emerging technology standpoint. I think the connectivity is going to be even much even more synced, even more stronger, and you're going to see far more devices being able to talk to each other, and as a result, making our lives much more easier. Providing security to our homes, being able to, for example, contact a healthcare provider if we have a fall, for instance, right? I mean, this technology is available right now. I mean, there are smart watches, for example, that can send a message to an ambulance if you have an accident on the road. So this connectivity, I think, is going to basically be stretched out to really high levels, and make our lives far more integrated, and possibly also be a nuisance in some situations. I think that's where I see
any implications of this integration in the Internet of Things on big data. Do you feel like if your devices are all interconnected, the data is being collected, similar data patterns emerge across devices?
That's right. So I think what's probably going to happen is right now we're analyzing behaviors, and we're analyzing customer behaviors and user behaviors. I think this is going to grow even more stronger, which has both positive and negative implications. Because the thing is, for example, your home would be able to predict what food you like on a Saturday evening at 7 p.m. Right? Because it would constantly be observing what are you doing every day. Like when you step into your house after work, what do you do next, right? So the question is, are you happy for your home to have that much information about you? And so I think there are a lot of user choices here. I think there's ethical issues that are going to come up front as a result of this connectivity. So I don't see the technology as a big thing, but I see the social issues that are going to result because of this high levels of this interaction and connectivity that's happening. Right? And also, I think to a large extent, I also in my opinion, there's a lot of buzz out there as well. For example, Google Glass was a technology that pretty cool a year back, and we all thought everyone would be wearing Google Glasses. But then I just read some articles that that people aren't really interested. So while you're going to get newer technologies being thrown at consumers, I think it's still there's a certain we have to keep the hype down, and I think the technologies are going to be more and more practical, and I think users are going to pick what they find is going what technologies they find are reducing their day-to-day workloads and make lives easier for them.
I see. Okay. So like at the end of the day, I guess customers always think.
That's right. Yes. So there's a number of technologies that are coming up, and you find that data mining is integrated deeper and deeper into devices, which as I said has positive and negatives.
Right.
So as I said, it's not the technology that's going to be a barrier. It's going to be what customers are going to prefer.
Okay. So they're going to be embedded in the technologies because now companies realize that we need this data.
Exactly right. Yeah, and because devices are can store more data, and they're becoming more powerful, as you see with the smartphone revolution. Smartphones are becoming smarter and smarter and even more powerful. And device sizes are shrinking. So small devices are going to be smart enough to be able to collect data, and then send all this data to a central processor, which then has this complete model of how you behave, what clothes you wear, what you eat every day, where you go out, and all of that.
Right, my iPhone can predict how much time I spend on Facebook.
Exactly right. But they're doing it right now.
Oh, they are doing this.
Yeah. So there are.
Do they map how much time you spend on each app?
Yeah, there's apps that can do that. There's apps that can, there's all these activity trackers. And then there's apps that can measure, if you want it. There are apps that can measure a whole lot of other factors. Right? For example, you see Apple spending a lot of, investing a lot in this fitness tracking, health tracking, right? That's
sleep pattern.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's data mining. That's all that is data mining. If you're collecting all this data about people, and then you're going to then overlay it with what they purchase on top. And you're going to overlay it with what activities they're doing. So there's this complete integration of a user's data. So basically, there's the system that is able to predict what you want, have a complete understanding of your behavior, your purchase history, your food habits, your health. So so essentially your life, right? So the question is, technologies in the next decade or so are going to do this more and more effectively, and some of them are probably going to do it even when you're without your permission.
Knowledge,
right? So I think that's where. So what I see is that technology is going to be more and more embedded in the next decade or so, and there's going to be more data mining built into all of these things. But then on the sidelines, I think there's probably going to be a lot of work. And there's on the privacy side of things, on the ethical issues as a result of this embedded data mining that's happening.
Okay, this is sort of the larger social issues.
So that's the larger social issues. I think they are going to be, because I think there's a threshold beyond which I think people probably are not going to like their privacy being violated with all these technologies. So I think that's probably going to be a focus. I mean, even right now in the European Union, there are people who ask Google to forget them. Right. So as you can see, so I think the technologies have to assure their end users that that their privacy is secure, their data is secure.
Right. Wow. Okay. It's very fascinating. I almost feel like you're coming back to school and you're registering for a class with you. So for students like me, for potential people who want to go deeper into the field, whether they're students or young professionals, what are some of the skill sets you think, or what are some of the things they can do to sort of prepare themselves towards this journey of going deeper into your field?
Yeah, sure. No, so I was just looking. This is the most recent survey by IBG. They surveyed a number of companies, and what they basically found was roughly 48% of these companies were planning to invest in big data and BI technologies in the near future, right? And a number of these companies also were looking for graduates and skilled people in the data sciences, as they call them now, right? So for students who are looking at at getting into the field, I think they should. What I would suggest is they should pay a lot of attention to their database, the data management, and the statistical skills. So university like Carnegie Mellon, for example, has they've got a large number of different types of courses in analytics. For example, they've got master's programs in business intelligence and analytics. They've got for example, at Carnegie Mellon University in Australia, we've launched a graduate diploma program, we've launched a graduate certificate program, and there are many universities now which are actually offering certificate programs for example, for people who are already in the field and who want to develop further, right? I would also suggest taking up a number of courses online for enthusiasts in this field who want to learn, want to touch the base, and there are a number of courses offered for free on any of the popular online.
An IIT professor was teaching something on Coursera.
Exactly right. Yes. And similarly, you have professors from Carnegie Mellon, you have professors from Stanford and professors from Harvard, and many universities similarly offering courses that provide you with an introduction to this field. And also, there are a number of open source technologies and tools available for free. So if you're interested in this, I would strongly recommend getting tools like, for example, the R environment for data analytics. There are a number of other open source tools, including, for example, there's RapidMiner. There are a number of vendors offering light versions of their data mining tools for end users to install and learn more. There are large volumes of online sources. If you just want to have an understanding of this field, including case studies and constant articles of data mining in the news, right? So just Google news articles in data mining, and you're going to see dozens of case studies coming up and all of that. So I would certainly recommend for serious professionals and for students who are seriously interested in this field to take up maybe a master's program like the global WISDOM program, which has a very strong emphasis on business intelligence and data analytics. And it's also a choice of many employers in the US and Australia. And there are similar programs all over the world. So I would strongly emphasize, working on your database skills, working on your data management skills, looking at data warehousing technologies, looking at also sharpening your skills in statistics, because if you're going to learn data mining, you cannot do that without a statistical background. So you don't have to be a statistical expert, but you still have to have fundamental grounding in statistics, right? So I would basically pay attention to these 4 areas.
Great, that was very helpful. So we definitely have a lot of students from ReachIvy coming your way at Carnegie Mellon, and hopefully we'll be able to join them at some point as well.
Yeah.
I have a student question actually from a student at IIT Bombay. He's actually the president of the Entrepreneurship Club at IIT Bombay, and hence his question is more leaning towards startups. So he asks, in the fields of business intelligence and data analytics, what does this hold for entrepreneurs? If I want to start a company in this space, because he's actually majoring in this space,
exactly.
and he's also budding entrepreneur. So from this early age startup.
Yeah, sure. So I think there's because of this field taking up a rapid rise at the moment. I think there's probably a big role where you require consultants to guide companies, especially smaller and smaller businesses, medium enterprises that really would like to take part, but they don't have the necessary skill set within the organization itself.
Right.
So there's a role. I think there's a lot of requirement for consultants, or for So if you talk about a startup, I mean, a company that can basically go to an organization, analyze their current state, and basically give them advice as to what is the right tool set, what are the right BI technologies that they should be investing their time and money on. I think that's where I certainly see there's going to be a requirement for people in that space. That is a consultancy and advisory space on how should I go about investing in BI, right, for my organization. Right? Large enterprises are able to do this because they've got the budgets, they've got the skill sets in many cases, right? But the small and medium scale businesses, that's where you have issues. And even governments, for example, they would find that they would certainly like to have advice on what kind of big data technology should they be investing in. So there's a big I think there's a big scope for consultants, for advisory roles in this area, and especially if you have the skills, if you have studied data mining, if you worked on projects, I certainly see a big this is a booming field. And I mean, I think in the I think probably right now we're at the start. In the next decade or so, you're going to see a big demand. In fact, I've seen statistics saying that there's a big vacuum at this stage, and there's going to be a large demand for data scientists, for data professionals in the next decade or so. So I see the field as being ripe for startups as well. So if you can provide, for example, a niche area where you can basically sell yourself as a consultancy for small scale businesses without expertise in BI, looking forward to invest in this. I think it's a great market for
I think you hit the nail on the head, because I look at our companies as small and medium enterprises.
Right, exactly.
And we'd love to have an expert come in and say, you've got students into Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, Harvard, MIT, NCR, whatever. Let me assess all this background data and see if there's any sort of threads I can join and connect the dots.
Exactly right, and you've correctly pointed that out. That is, for many small businesses, they do have a lot of data, but then they're not sure, how do you make sense of that? And a startup or a small consultancy that basically says, look, here are your different systems. This is the data that you're collecting, and this is what you can do with the data, and this is what you get at the end of it. Giving them that simple feasibility report, and then basically suggesting some alternatives for them. Open source, non-open source. I think that has a lot of scope, in my opinion. So.
Sagar, if you're listening, we're happy to be your first client, so definitely send us an email. Thank you, Professor. I just want to say a very heartfelt, genuine thank you from ReachIvy, and it's truly an honor to be sitting here with you. So
thank you so much. You're welcome for having me.